Media about nuclear families is incredibly difficult for me to understand. The core of my repulsion towards media starring the family unit comes from characters treating their family as an immutable necessity. If a character says anything to the extent of, "We have to stick together, we're a family," I know I'm dealing with an alien species. The family stick together sentiment is only second place in shittiness to the classic, "I only did this bad thing for you." For sake, just talk to your kid. In either instance, I can only roll my eyes when this type of character conflict comes up, because the truth is, you do not have to do anything, ever. You did not have to lie to your kid. Your family sure as shit doesn't need to stick together. To cite the profound wisdom of an image macro, if it sucks, hit the bricks. And since my family sucked, that's what I did. Me and Pikachu set off for our worldwide adventure to catch 'em all, now completely unbothered that my mom was getting a little too cozy with her new roommate. But I know writers keep putting the family stick together trope in their story because it's a shortcut to making it relatable. And maybe shortcut isn't the right word, since most well-adjusted members of society are going to agree with this sentiment. I know my resistance makes me the asshole. If you give me the classic children's book, Guess How Much I Love You, I'll use it to wipe my ass, like Shrek did in his first movie. At this point in my life, I'm in the all-star musical opener, happily farting up my bachelor pad and eating gruel all day. But even Shrek grew up, got over his trauma, and started pumping his load into a voluptuous ogress. Being affected by childhood happenings as an adult is, by all measures and metrics, cringe. I'm not gonna be a total ass and turn off the TV if something with a family comes on. I will always be down to watch The Simpsons, and I'm not even gonna be a snob and say Golden Era only. But I will never rank a Homer and Marge are having marital problems episode anywhere near my top 50 favorites. I can't look at Homer and Marge's problems and go, why don't they just get a divorce? Since, yeah, that would defeat the purpose of the show. Fucking duh. But more often than not, when a piece of media depicts a family, I turn it to Emperor Lur, watching Friends. The toad-like alien, distant from human culture, wonders, why does Ross, the largest friend, not simply eat the other 5? And that's me. That's me reading Litterbox Comics. This comic makes me feel like Emperor Lur more than any piece of media. Every strip, I just wonder what is the issue. And then I wonder why the characters are even in whatever predicament that week, because all of their problems could go away just by communicating with each other or eating each other. If you've never heard of Litterbox Comics, it's a gag-a-day webcomic strip about the wacky parenting adventures of a mama cat who's a Midwest 4, her dumpy husband, and her shit-stained children she should have left at the fire department. An animated pilot was recently announced. Me and the boys at the bottom of the crab bucket are pretty worked up over this. But before I start roasting, I'll point out the good things about Litterbox Comics. First, the character designs. There's a real timelessness to their designs. They are all cute without being too saccharine, and unique without being cluttered. Each family member is distinct, and carries themselves in a different way. It's strong, clean cartooning, but it never feels sterile. When the characters break model for a joke, the expressions hit hard. When this is sent to animation, it's going to look great. In the announcement for the animated pilot, the artist said they've always imagined this as a cartoon. Second, it's clean. This is all the more impressive, given that this comic is consistently experimenting with panel size and layout to better deliver their punchlines. And third, the surrealist moments. The little fantasy elements and comedic exaggeration elevate this comic. Otherwise, it would just be, shit mom groups say, furry edition. Because of this, combined with the previous 2 points, I see why this has such a huge following. They're doing something unique, and the writing style has a distinct voice. The comic Twiggo Tweet has a decent enough setup and punchline. It's the kind of absurdist left turn I could see in a classic SpongeBob episode. Honestly, if they keep going in this direction, I could see my cold heart warming and thinking they're a pretty okay webcomic. And that's about it. Now, if you don't mind, I would like to brandish my backseat driver's license, awarded to me when I decided I would never have children, and say that these parents suck. There is a constant anger and frustration over scenarios that are entirely their fault. Take this comic, which they deemed hilarious enough to draw twice. I have so many questions. The first of which being, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you posting your baby to Facebook? And if you're going to post your baby to Facebook, why do you feel so compelled to do it now, in the middle of a crying fit? I guess the joke is expectation versus reality, or we only see the good parts online, and this is a peek behind the curtain. I'm gonna sound like one of those please think of the children weirdos, but I'm on their side with this issue. Parents shouldn't be posting their kids online. It's weird, it's driven by peer pressure, and I hate it. In an ideal world, the only pictures of people in diapers are fully consenting adults. And we see more examples of preventable bad behavior in the strip Familiar. You did not have to buy your kid those noisy toys. You didn't have to keep them around. You could have donated them. And it's scenarios like this where I'm just sort of scratching my head like, come on dude, you did this to yourself. And on to Exhibit C of you could have prevented this, are all of the comics about kids being picky eaters. These are a little more subtle, but they all piss me off the same. We are all products of our environment, so if a kid is a quote-unquote picky eater, I'm not rushing to blame Junior. In the book, Your Kid's a Brat and It's All Your Fault, author Elaine Rose Glickman has this to say about picky eaters. Here's a newsflash. If your kid gets hungry enough, he will eat. I will say it louder, because this is truly amazing and important news, and you can't possibly hear it over your anguished cries, as you beg little Ethan to take another bite of chicken nugget, please, please honey, just one more. If your kid gets hungry enough, he'll eat. So let's take a deep breath and dare to imagine that a meal is just a meal. That is, you offer your kid some reasonably appealing, nutritious food, either accepts it or rejects it, and you call it a day. It's not like he's off to enlist in the Merchant Marines. As soon as you unbuckle him from the booster seat, he'll have the chance to eat again in 3 hours. And if he gets hungry in the meantime, well, perhaps he'll be a bit more receptive to that perfectly acceptable black bean quesadilla he just hurled on the floor. To summarize that chapter, parents, please chill out over the picky eater issue. The chapter also gives some pretty solid tips for how to correct this behavior, and the entire book is full of no-nonsense parenting advice. This was required reading for my backseat driver's license, and I personally recommend it. Plus, in the library copy I read, a previous reader manually crossed out all of the cuss words. That censorship adds a lot of cool points to any book. Anyway, back to Litterbox. Here's where this comic goes feeling a little unrelatable to emotionally stunted. There is an inability to empathize with the kid characters. Too often, parents are expecting Junior to adhere to their rigid expectations. For example, take this strip where the family watches Star Wars. I, too, agree. Star Wars sucks. He is right to leave immediately. Maybe they should have waited a little longer when he'd be at the right age to care about mainline Star Wars, or offer some media that's more geared towards his demographic. Star Wars is a huge franchise. I guarantee if you looked beyond what you think is cool, you could have found something Star Wars related that he would have liked. And here's another example. One of the more interesting generational divides are old folks feeling befuddled by Let's Plays. That is, the classic question of, why would you want to watch someone play a game instead of play it yourself? To which you can instantly reply, why do some people watch sports instead of just playing it themselves? It's such a tired boomer debate that I feel redundant and hack even spelling it out here. We have all heard this shit before. Why is it being rendered in a comic? Clearly, Junior just wants to chill and watch Ryan's World. I can't blame him for that. This is a completely different mindset from actually playing superheroes with your dad, who, well, might just suck at it. I've hated every game of Dungeons & Dragons I've ever played, but let's be real. If I had the chance to play D&D with Dan Harmon or the McElroys, you know I'd take it. If your kid just wants to watch Ryan hang with his dad instead of do that IRL, it's a skill issue. Alright, on to Exhibit 3. Alright, before I get too lure-like, I get the joke. I do. You want to talk to your kid? He keeps saying meh, but finally opens up when it's bedtime, which is a totally inappropriate time to get into a deeper conversation. Alright, I acknowledge the setup and punchline. I get the joke. But even here, I'm on Junior's side. The one time he initiates the conversation, when he feels like he has something worth sharing, it's met with an eye roll. Of course he's gonna say meh when you badger him with inane chit-chat. What did you fucking expect? Maybe instead of pestering him with small talk, try a better conversation opener. Once again, this is a skill issue. This brings me to the absolute worst subgenre of Litterbox strips, the I did this for you strips. Here we see the comic's core philosophy strongly on display. Because they're the ultimate no one asked you to do this, plus, for the love of Christ, please spend 30 seconds talking to your kid, and this is your fault, all rolled into one. Look, if I could have an isekai reincarnation reroll, I'd take a mom who's always doing elaborate Pinterest projects over a mom who's whipping out La Chancla. Just because Pinterest mom is better than a mom who doles out corporal punishment doesn't mean she's actually good. I hate conflating parents' effort and stress with good parenting. Just because you stressed yourself out doing some bullshit doesn't mean it makes you a good parent. It just means you're stressed out and bringing down the energy of the room. There's a part from some book that I'll try to remember here. It was either from a book about sociology of the media or a book about why puppets are fucking cool. In the book, the author brings up the classic parent complaint that kids are such couch potatoes. They'd rather watch Sesame Street than actually play. The author, instead of blaming the children for their laziness, tries to explain why this might be happening. Their answer: Sesame Street is a whole-ass puppet show happening in your living room. You've got to offer something more interesting than that. If you turned off the TV and gave your kid an IRL puppet show, they'd want to watch that more than a recording of a puppet show. Before you call your kid lazy, ask yourself, what in your kid's environment is more interesting than Elmo? And that hazy book memory is what comes to mind when I see Cat Mom stressing out over her Pinterest projects. She's trying to compete with the puppet show Sesame Street. C for effort, I guess, and we can bump that up to an A if we're grading on a curve. But it's nothing the kid wants or even asked for, and now he's the asshole for not being interested. Maybe instead of just springing your own on the kid, ask him what he wants. I'll tap my backseat driver's license one more time before anyone says, if you had kids, you'd understand. Yeah, no shit. It's easy for me to point to parenting books on how it quote-unquote should be done without having attempted it myself. Would I get caught in a cycle of misery where my kid refuses to eat his vegetables? I don't know. Maybe. That shit looks hard, which is why I'm not gonna do it. But when there's a cycle of misery, you should do everything in your power to break it. Before I get any tisk-tisks in the comment section, I'm not referring to anyone actually trapped in cycles of abuse and poverty. I've had some pretty strong victim-blamey language throughout this video. Since I'm dumb and I don't know how to reword that, I'll make myself clear. That is not what I meant, and if you take me out of context or in bad faith, you are dumber than me. Here's the thing. These fictional parents are not the victims here, and I'm confused why the comic keeps insisting that they are. They are constantly in a struggle of their own making. This is a parent-child dynamic they've invented where the parent, the arbiter of power, is the one victimized by their own toddler. It's downright weird. Why are you letting a kid tell you what to do? This isn't even some we need to talk about Kevin-style behavior from the child. It's just some regular-ass kid shit that the parents are constantly struggling with. Here's one more comic I'll nitpick. Is this working? Is your stubbornness going to get your kid to wash his hands? Did it work before, so that's why you're doing it again? Are you planning on having this debate every time Junior curls out a shit? I feel myself getting more lure-like the longer I gaze into this abyss. Now, say hypothetically, one night I can't resist, and I go in raw. The only scenario I can imagine this happening is if, much like Shrek, my Princess GF is afflicted by a curse that makes her gain a cool 250 pounds overnight. And now, I've got to deal with parenthood. I'm sure I'd learn real fast that being a parent sure is tough, and boy, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'll do everything to make my kids' lives more like Yotsubato or Bluey, and less like this dredge of misery that's Litterbox. No wonder this is how their youngest used the monkey's paw.